Okay, good morning, everyone. Kia ora and welcome to this morning's roundtable discussion. This is part of Flash Frontier's new initiative in conjunction with the University of Otago Centre for Humanities, which we're very excited to be starting this year. Flash Frontier is a literary journal that's been around for many years in New Zealand, championing all kinds of different kinds of small form. But this year it's broadening its focus, and we're shifting to also a wider inclusion of arts and sciences across disciplines. So we're really excited to have this kind of collaboration. And this morning, my name is Lola Elvy. I'm the editor for the Roundtable series, which is going to be starting off with this issue is called He Mutunga Endings. And I thought we could just start this morning by going around introducing ourselves briefly and saying a bit about where we're phoning in from, because it's an international set of panels, a set of people, and a little bit about our backgrounds as well. Kirstie, do you want to go first? You're up on my screen first.
Kia ora, good morning everyone, or good afternoon. I'm not sure what the time zones are everywhere else. Right, introducing myself, I am Kirstie McKinnon, a name, and I am a poet, and I have become a relatively recently visual artist, and the art has been a way of really intensely engaging with, I guess, an interior emotional landscape, and also a way of contacting or being with the interactions with the outer world, the landscape around us. And in particular, I began painting butterflies, but I've kind of branched out into painting the moon and some feathers as well. So that's where I'm at with my work. Anything else, Lola? I'm not sure what else to say.
That's great. Thank you. Florian, how about you?
Kia ora, good morning, everyone. Florian Graichen. I'm a general manager in the Bioeconomy Science Institute here in New Zealand. I'm speaking from Rotorua. The Bioeconomy Science Institute is now the largest research organization in New Zealand, and probably best explained with our Te Reo name, Mayangi-Tayo. It's a beautiful, beautiful name. And it means uplifting nature through science, and that really speaks to what we do. It is interconnecting with the natural world. It is about land, water, people, knowledge, and the environment around us. For people that the name bioeconomy or the terminology bioeconomy does not mean anything. This is an economic system where we use renewable natural resources, plants, animals, microbes, organic waste, to produce food, materials, energy, and other services, moving away from fossil fuels, as you can imagine, very timely at the moment. It's about sustaining the environment. It's about the people. It's about the economy. And it's about to produce everything we use today, clothes, medicine, plastics, environmental services, but in a sustainable and renewable way.
Great, thank you. Krushil.
Morena tātou, ngā mihi mai o hā kia koutou I tēnei ata. Ko Krushil Watene tēnei, he mihi atu nei. He uri no Ngāti Manu, te hikatu, Ngāti Whātua Rākei me Tonga. So good morning. It's really lovely to see you all. I'm Krushil Watene. I'm dialing in from Auckland, Tamaki in New Zealand, but I'm from tribal communities in the north of New Zealand in the wider Pacific. So the Bay of Islands, the Hokianga on the other coast, but also Tamaki here as well. And Hunga, which is a beautiful little island in the Vava'u Islands group in the Kingdom of Tonga. I'm also part of the philosophy discipline at Waipapa Taumataro here at the University of Auckland, and really looking forward to talking to you all. Kia ora mai tātou.
Thank you. Great. Luke.
Kia ora, everybody. My name is Luke Vitk. I'm a composer, performer, and improviser. I'm also the composition lecturer at the Waipapa Taumataro at the University of Auckland in New Zealand, Aotearoa. And environment has been a big theme in my work, in my compositions, drawing sounds from the biophony and geophony, making symphonies which puts attention of what's happening around us in a social, natural, and architectural sense. And I'm organizer of many ensembles to raise awareness about climate change and draw attention to organisms and processes which are happening around us through sound and music.
Thank you. Sam.
Hello, good morning and good afternoon where I am. I'm Sam Rasnake, and I'm calling from Northeast Tennessee in the U.S. I'm a retired teacher at the secondary and college level, and I've been writing most of my life, mostly bad pieces, but I've tried to get better as I've moved along. And for about 30 years, my writing has been focused on an ekphrastic type, focused on cinema, art, music, and literature. Really a looking back. What I've found that I'm sort of moving away from that, and in relation to what's out there. I've just noticed nature more and more in my writing as I've gotten older. I don't know if that's a natural process or unique to me, I'm not sure, but I'm happy to be with you today.
Thank you. And Marton.
Hi, thanks for having me. My name's Marton Vølstad. I'm dialing in from Oslo, Norway. It's 9:40 in the evening here. And as perhaps my name gives away, I'm partly Norwegian, originally from the United States. I've been living in Europe for some 17 years or so, various places, but mostly in Norway. I work as an environmental economist. What that means is using economic tools to try to price and incentivize economic actors to reduce environmental harm and climate harm. So let's take greenhouse gas emissions as an example. That's the result of economic activity, but the consequences of those emissions aren't necessarily paid by the perpetrator, so to speak. They're paid by everybody. So part of what we try to do as environmental economists is internalize those externalities and reflect the cost of climate change in economic activities. And I'll be happy to get a little bit more into that later.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Also, thank you to those of you overseas, Sam and Martin, who are dialing in from different time zones and, navigating the uncertainties that come with that. It's really wonderful to have a really diverse set of panelists. And also, even with our people who are located in New Zealand, I know we come from a lot of different backgrounds, all of us. So I thought I'd introduce myself again just briefly. So again, I'm Lola. I'm the Lola Elvy. I'm the Round Series editor, but my work is in music and literature, so music and poetry mostly. I also work a lot in education. But my research is looking at bioacoustics, sounds that are emitted in the natural environment, sonic science, what those sounds can tell us about the natural environment. And I'm really interested in art as a form of science communication. So how we might actually take some of these scientific concepts, which are maybe a little bit niche or on the outside of awareness, and bring them more into a wider demographic and make them accessible to a wider demographic. So that's a little bit about me. And so I think I wanted to get started. Some of you have already touched on this a little bit. But I wanted to start with the question of the topic of this panel, which is sustenance and sustainability, and just start with asking, how does sustenance and sustainability come into your own practice, whether that's creative, whether that's research or academic or all of the above? How do those two concepts intersect, overlap, or not? And a couple of you have already touched on that, but I wondered if anyone had any thoughts to add. And feel free just to interject as well.
Can I start, Lola?
Yes,
Is that okay?
We don't need to take turns the whole time.
Okay, it's cool. Yeah, and feel free to interrupt me, anyone. I think as an artist now, I can call myself that. All of my writing work and creative work began when I began surfing, and the observation and interaction with the water and the creatures in the sea, but also the beach and the dune landscape sort of started to filter into my I don't know, into me. And then I found I had things to say and things I wanted to say about the natural environment and things that I began to notice in I guess, a very gentle scientific way. And some things have taken me years to observe, that a pine cone takes 3 years to turn brown from its original purple to green. And these processes are very slow. And all of these things sustain me internally, but also my response is largely to want to protect the natural environment too, which is a source of so much wonder, and also the source of my writing and art. Your question is really interesting. How do we bring that kind of internal response to a wider audience and get other people to see these gentle movements, I suppose, within us and outside us? So I don't know the answer to that question, but I love being here with you all and considering it. Thank you.
Maybe if I can add to that from a professional perspective, what you raise with sustenance and sustainability, that's pretty much the essence of the balance we try to strike in the work we do. It is this essential resources of today, of the generation of today, be it food, feed, clothing, and the likes, how you maintain that, while with sustainability, this long-term regenerative, without compromising any rights or needs of future generations. And this is where the way, what we have seen, bioeconomy principles, rethinking how food is grown, how energy is created, how materials are made, is absolutely critical. And so it is that term sustenance and is a really critical driver for everything we are doing.
Can I jump in here? Really interesting. So that's similar to how I was thinking about this, Florian. I thought the obvious way to think about this sustenance and sustainability is to kind of impose this kind of temporal dimension and temporal connection between them, right? And that's what we find with, often mainstream sustainability literature, and also about intergenerational justice as being kind of contained within this challenge that we have of meeting the needs of the present, while also somehow figuring out how we can cultivate and enable future people to meet their needs too, or well-being understood, however you want to frame that. But then, of course, it models it as this kind of almost tragic dilemma in some way, right? Where we have to choose between them in some cases, right? To let present or future generations down sometimes. And of course, I think there's something missing in this kind of way in which we think about sustenance and sustainability. I think there's something important about it, but I think that when we make these very rigid distinctions, temporal or otherwise, that there's something we miss, that there's something intergenerational about sustenance itself, something in the moment and in the past about sustainability. So I think that there's another way to think about this, and that we can tell a more unified story about things like well-being and justice, about how we might embed obligations to future people in our lives in ways that we see that obligation and meeting it as somehow defining our well-being too, right? So seeing that there's some kind of legacy in the way that we live our lives that touch us in ways that we're never going to realize, right, in the present. So I wonder if we can kind of think more broadly about sustenance and sustainability too.
Sorry, just to follow up on that, are you suggesting that sustenance and sustainability, really, they're not even two separate concepts, they're part and parcel of the same? Is that what you're saying?
I think, absolutely.
That idea.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, Sam, were you going to say something?
Yes. I wanted to follow up on that idea that, as I'm sure everyone is aware of, the turmoil that the U.S. is experiencing right now, and not just keeping it to ourselves, we're putting it out in the world, and we're really divided in this country, and the leadership has no, as far as I'm concerned, the leadership in the U.S. has no concept of something like sustainability and sustenance. There is no looking out. There's America first, that kind of thing, disregarding the world, other than how it can be destroyed. That's what I feel. And when I mentioned that my work has been moving more inward, yet outward more environmentally, I've noticed, looking over some things in my journal, I've written a lot about space and the universe. There was a mention of butterflies in the art earlier, and I'm thinking of butterflies to the point of 300 billion years from the Big Bang, where the last galaxy that's known. And there's related, certainly in the US, and maybe it's trying to hold on to that. We break treaties. We're not interested in peace anymore. We're not interested in the environment. And if we don't have that, how can we expect humans to exist? And that's a little soapbox, but there it is.
Could I perhaps interject?
Mm-hmm, of course.
At least in my line of work, it's easy to be very pessimistic. But I'd like to introduce a bit of optimism around the discussion today.
Great.
Yeah. Well, it's despite the global turmoil that we're experiencing, there are some systems that are functioning very well. International climate cooperation hasn't died as a result of recent events, or even disruptions over the last 20 years. It goes on, and there's a reason for that. It's because it's interesting for countries and companies to participate in international climate cooperation.
Yes.
Companies have an interest in protecting the environment and the climate to a certain extent, because if they don't have an environment and a climate, they won't be able to sell their goods and products and services, and they'll lose their markets. They have an interest in preserving and even developing markets to sell their goods and services. It's a cynical view, but they do have an interest in avoiding total calamity. And if governments fail to preserve those interests, well, there are other sectors of society that step in their absence. To take a very concrete example, what happened when, again, the United States pulled out of the Paris Agreement, the United Nations International Treaty on Climate Cooperation. But this is the second time. Well, it didn't end. It didn't end the Paris Agreement. In fact, the U.S. wasn't particularly active in the first place, so it didn't have much of an impact. But what it did do was encourage some wealthy donors to step in the place of the United States and get their name in the headlines. Michael Bloomberg, for an example, he as soon as the U.S. pulled out, he donated some millions of dollars to the UNFCCC, which is interesting. It's interesting. It seems that when there's, what is the saying? Chaos is also opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe if I can add to the positivity, that is something we observe probably with companies and more with innovative new companies, is that the term sustainability is not sufficient for them anymore, because sustainability ultimately would be the minimizing harm or maintaining current state. This doesn't acknowledge that we have to catch up on a deficit. If you look at the planetary boundaries, we've solidly broken 6 or 7 of them, and so that term regenerative or really doing better or paying forward is becoming more and more with corporates actually that we are working with. So there is a real appetite to do that, despite they might not dial or might not change the dial globally, but they know they have their role to play, and that's something that encourages us actually really enormously. Also in the context of then the next generation that comes through these companies as workforce.
Perhaps I can also quickly add to that positivity by saying, aside from the global movements and corporations, we also see lots of local communities doing so much work right across the world, actually, Indigenous and other local communities who never stop working, who never stop seeing themselves as stewards. And I think there's sources of inspiration there too. Yeah.
No. If you want to do this what we've seen, this is an enormous role there to play for teachers or for artists that we've seen. What we noticed is there's no point in science, technology, innovation if I can't get it to people, to the environment. And that translatory piece, I can speak about it in the most academically or factually correct terms. That doesn't mean people will take it up or people will use it or people will understand it. And teachers have a role to play, authors, poets, artists in this translatory piece. And New Zealand, I think, has a great example with one of our artists, David Trowbridge, where he really takes environmental inspiration, takes shapes and spheres out of nature, takes natural material to use lamps and shades and lighting. And there's a lot of material he's using now, we develop, that no one would care about it, but because he is using it, we can get it into people. And so this is where I believe this interface artists, scientists, poets, teachers is really, really critical going forward.
Yes, and that idea about science in the community, or how do we kind of bridge the gap between this science, which is highly specialized, and I mean, a lot of the concepts that, if you broke them down scientifically, they might, like you said, you can be factually correct, but that might not carry the same kind of meaning in a community context, and especially when you're talking about education with teachers and people who are younger. So yeah, and I was wondering actually, Luke, if you could talk a little bit about your work, because your work is very much in this hybrid space between, using the environment sometimes suggestively, but sometimes very explicitly in your creative output.
Yeah, I was going to join for sure. But yeah, I've organized many efforts to kind of like bring awareness to what's happening with our climate, especially already in like 2018-19, where like the climate change got really visible in mainstream media. People start to talk about it more, and we start to organize around that. And I've organized many ensembles. So with my opera ensemble, we actually did this climate change concert where I commissioned all the members to write a piece about different phenomena of what it can mean. And I feel like I want to also point out the playful space of music and art, that actually we can try out concepts we can practice concepts which are connected to sustenance, and which are connected to sustainability, which are connected to things which are not practiced in society, but we can like plant a seed of that behavior on public or semi-public conditions, in public or semi-public conditions, depends how many people come. So that's also something we've been doing. I can just mention a couple of the pieces of my members. For example, the piece of May Margot May, who was working about mitigation and adaptation. So kind of like mitigate our action towards resources, for example. So in the musical sense, we applied those principles on the musical outcomes. So kind of like changing habits of society. And for example, in this piece, we are sharing instruments and finding ways how to play one instrument in two people. And we are also recycling all the scores of the whole concert of everybody's members to read them in a new order. So you can see this is just like a very practical application of principles which we could be practicing, and we can see immediately how it changed the reality of established practice. Right? As music, each person individually play the instrument. So now people sharing instruments and also recycle the resource of the scores. Don't make a new one. So and then you can listen the music coming out of this outcome. So it's just very sonified certain kind of behavior while practicing it, while people observing. And this concert also contains after discussion, when we go to the water, to the shore, and all the audience, all the performers just mingle and share their opinions about climate change, their experiences, their ideas about what we should do. So there was, for example, the social kind of level of what we can kind of demonstrate with music. Another piece was mapping the tides of the ocean. Another piece was about whales and cargo, where the sounds of the ship, the pollution, the noise pollution of the ocean would disturb the life of the whales, and bringing attention to it and kind of like going through the piece in different constellation of those ratios of noise and the whale natural sound, the biophony of the ocean. My piece was pointing out about how the wolves changed the rivers, the ecosystems, and how we can reinstall ecosystems. For example, this story was from the Yellowstone Park, where they reintroduced wolves, and it went so far that it solidified the banks of the rivers and repopulated different species, and also revitalized the plant. So also like talking about different ecosystems, and gathering around it, play with it as a piece. So I feel like art sometimes cannot have so much impact in the scientific way, but I feel like it really complements science in a way of like it can really give you information. And I wouldn't want to take the power from art in the scientific way also, because we can sonify processes, and we can read the information from listening through our ears, and we can get a new ideas and new information from those processes. So I feel like the listening element is also very important in the scientific research. But I feel like also the power of play in music, and demonstrate and bring people in and make it accessible for people to try out those processes. I feel like this could have really like some impact on communities, making our interaction alive, contradicting isolation, which is also connected through. I feel like that is also connected to climate change and climate. Like if we are isolated, how do we use resources and stuff like that.
Well, this idea of play is interesting too, because play, it kind of, like you were talking about how it allows you to, I don't know if it's exactly how you said it, but how play, allows you to explore hypothetical scenarios, or scenarios that have not yet come to pass. And I feel like I was thinking about Krushil. I know you were involved in a climate workshop recently that also had this element of play in it, and the idea of actually, and I feel like a lot of philosophy does that too. You kind of are taking a thought and actually carrying it beyond what's actually in the world right now, but to an extent that's you're exploring the hypothetical in new dimensions, or hopefully to its furthest dimensions even. And I feel like that is a lot what we do in our art too. And maybe there's something about, I wonder if there's something about our society now. We've become very production focused, we're very efficiency focused, but play is something that takes time. Like you really have to sit with the concept and think about it for a long time before it ever results in anything tangible. It might never result in anything tangible. And so like even if you, and I know a lot of us are teachers in the room too, and if you think about the way kids learn today, everything is so focused on output and production and quote unquote achievement that there is no time for that process of play. And what is it that we're losing there? And I know some of you also, Kirstie, I know you do work with, a lot of your work has a kind of performative element too, which is very slow. You have a real style that takes time and demands time also from the audience, which I think is a really, it's an interesting way to draw the audience in, or to ask more of people. I was just wondering if anyone had thoughts about that.
Oh, sorry, Krushil. Oh, yeah. I'll just jump in there. I've found that play has become a really crucial part of. I just wanted to speak to something Florian said about regeneration, about not just sustaining but growing a thing. And I found that play in my creative practice, getting two quite different ideas So in a painting, I might paint a kind of a watery and almost dissolving, feels like the landscape's dissolving. It's quite wretched even. And then adding in playfully, if it's playful, and then adding in a fritillary, a butterfly that I'd seen in the dunes into that kind of melting landscape, and then thinking about where will it go? Where is it going to land? It's living, it's moving in the way that we all are through this kind of landscape. And so there becomes something in the picture begins to restore a kind of hope within me, in the same way that this conversation actually restores a kind of hope. I hope that my work isn't too slow, Lola. I don't want to bore people. I'm terrified of boring people, so I will stop talking. But behind me,
that's not what I meant. No, that's not what I meant. But that's something we talk about in music too. I was actually talking to someone about this the other day too. That it's something about, and Luke, I think we've probably even had this conversation too. That it's in other settings, but that in music, if you write a piece that's 10 minutes long, you're demanding 10 minutes of the audience's time, and so you better make it worth it. Like there is something about things that take a long time. That's not a bad thing. Like there's a real power in that, and it's kind of a dual-sided power, because you can really you can use that how you want if you can capture it the right way. So no, I didn't mean to imply that it was too slow. I think that's a really interesting piece because it enforces an experiential aspect. People can't just, pop in for a minute and pop out. They have to sit with it. And I think that, and also to put it in gentler language, you invite them to sit in it, which is also really lovely.
Maybe if I can kind of do on that playing side, that resonates with me, because I can see how the next generation of scientists that we have is coming through, and they are quite pragmatic and systematic at their approach of innovation. And what we don't see that often anymore are these accidental discoveries that you get through by just playing. And you go through history, 3M, the Post-it notes. That's an accident that was never planned. Teflon was never planned. Penicillin was never planned. So there's a lot of that we would lose if we don't teach kids this playing part. And I think the other aspect that Luke spoke about, which is really important, is the systems thinking. Again, we've taught a whole generation about cause and effect. A goes to B, B goes to C. But now in sustainability, regenerative, and the likes, these are complex systems. And the way that was explained in arts or kind of orchestras performing and bringing things to life is a complex system. And that's the part that we are now trying to get into people to understand, that this is interdisciplinary. This is many aspects, many thoughts have to come together. And that's a lot from a science perspective we can learn from arts and poetry.
Thanks for that, Florian. I was about to ask actually a question about the role of imagination and play in science, and I was really interested in your answer. I really love this conversation. I think what I'm hearing is that actually art, customary and contemporary art forms are more than just translation, actually. They're actually integral to any discipline. And that's how I see this. Mary Midgley, a wonderful UK philosopher, she usually described philosophers. She said, great philosophers have to be two things. She said they have to be really clear and analytical and communicate really well. And she says, kind of like a lawyer does. But then she also said, but they have to be poets as well. Right? They have to be creative and they have to be imaginative, because they have to take people with them on those journeys. Otherwise, there's no point to the knowledge that you're creating. And so I think, absolutely, like you said, Florian, we need to develop in our next generation of scientists, but all of our scholars and children, that art and play is integral to anything that we want to do, right? And to do that well.
If I could jump in about the importance of play and also the importance of, I think they're connected. When you're playing, you're at least from my experience. Let's say you build a sandcastle, then the first thing you want to do is, make another one that's different, right? Or, uh, smash the first one and build a new one. And so you're constantly iterating and asking, what if it was a little different? What if I changed this? What if I added this? What if, what if you put this here? What if you put it there? And that sort of mindset, I think, is incredibly important, because let's say you're writing a piece of music, you're probably asking the same questions. What if I put this here, put that there, move that over here? What does it look like? How does it sound? And suddenly it clicks. I think that applies to research. It applies to some of this more technical climate work. You need to be critical and ask, what if we changed this little thing, and how would it look? Would it improve? Would it make sense? Would it click? That's, I think, is a form of play.
Definitely, that speculative thinking, that imagining something that doesn't exist yet, and also that balance, I guess, between repetition and innovation is also interesting too. That sometimes you can't get too stuck in one side or the other, because you kind of need the two to interact with each other. It's really interesting.
I was only thinking that I would like to propose that play is not like associated with children only, and I feel like that's all
Yes.
our kind of like task for contradicting everything what's happening in the world, to just
Yeah.
like be playful as adults, and yeah, like keep creativity on in oral subjects. And on the long duration kind of note, the slowness of things, like I feel like in 2013, like in philosophy, was laziness as a rupture of capitalism, or speeding up the society, and it was a big theme. I noticed, but also in music, like we have this kind of interruption. For example, I've been at 6 hours concerts, 6 hour long pieces, or I've been on and what this long form does, I feel like this is exactly why slowing down is contradicting what's happening now in the world, in terms of like what's happening. If you slow down, you start to observe what's around you, and that's the thing, as you start to notice things. And that's, like, so in the fast beat, maybe we organize concerts to pay attention to this, but if everybody slows down, everybody will see it already. so you can also like have very very slow piece to just make people observe what's around them, but also what's inside them, because stuff will come up when people need to sit for a long time with a piece. So you start to notice things. So I feel like long form or slow forms are also very impactful for people, for people's behavior, and for what people see.
Yeah. And actually, Sam, I wanted to ask you too, going off of that, because your work is poetry, but it's the fact that you're so interested in cinema and music, like you're interested in these forms of art that exist in time, like cinema and music are temporal in the same way that Luke is talking about. But how does it, and also from your experience teaching, because now, if as a retired teacher, you have a unique perspective maybe on kind of the trajectory that's occurred over the last period of time. What do you think of this role of play and temporality? Oh, I think you're muted. Okay.
I was thinking of Martin was talking about this building sandcastles, and you built this one. Well, you don't want to build the same thing again. You want to go in a different direction, which in terms of writing, that's why you should be a good reader, so you know what not to write. You can't write that story again. You've got to go over here. Linda Ronstadt was working on a recording series, and Brian Wilson of the Beach Boys, who's a musical genius and savant, was producing, and he was having difficulty with it. Couldn't get the instruments together, and all of a sudden, Linda Ronstadt said Wilson went to the piano and just started playing a completely different song, completely different key, which is really his form of play. At his house, he had a sandbox, and he would have a piano in the sandbox, and he would just play. And he was really playing in the sense of the way a kid would play. And then the idea of what to do with the cellos arrived. And that's like the sandcastle. You build this one, here's a little idea, and you take it over here and you go with it like that. It's hard to see that value, and that's what I found in terms of teaching the higher ups, administrators and state legislatures and all of that. They want to see immediate results, and you can't get immediate results. Scientifically, you don't know what this research will produce decades from now. It's not clear how it connects, but it will connect, but it doesn't connect today. And that's you see the change developing maybe slowly, though I know this century it's picked up immensely in speed, mainly because of the internet. I mean, not many years ago, this meeting today wouldn't have been possible. And how do you plan for that? You can't really plan for that. You've got to do what you do. And if play is it, you don't put it aside, you nurture it. I think you nurture it. And we all should do that in whatever field, because you don't know how it will develop later on.
I
don't know if that answered your question.
I think that's really interesting, this playing not only for children, but for adults. It brought me back to one very specific brainstorming session we had. And you probably all have been in brainstorming sessions. Like in the past, you did your Post-it notes and your flip charts. And now you do mirror boards. We had one facilitated where the facilitator came in with a massive box of Lego blocks. And so the challenge was we wanted to brainstorm a specific process of a factory. And so it was like, no one is allowed to draw anything. You have to build with Lego blocks what. So he came to a group of senior people and said, build it. If you can't imagine it, build it. The most fascinating thing was then, it went to construction and everything, but there were elements that were in the final building or in the final plant that were because someone put it in Lego blocks. And that was a cafeteria outside, because someone was like, of course you need coffee. You don't know who can work without coffee. And there were charging stations for EV bikes. And that was because someone put it on with Lego blocks, tried to build it and show it where it should sit. So that was actually absolutely fascinating how the enjoyment people got when they were allowed to play at a very, clearly no kids in the room, but the enjoyment was enormous.
Yeah, and it's interesting too how I'm not sure if this is exactly what you're saying, but it's interesting how easy it is for us to get stuck in a certain pattern of education, of history, everything we've learned up until now that informs who we are, how we make decisions, and so much of that is linked in ways that we can't even perceive sometimes to the different, to the physicality around us, the physicality of space, the physicality of medium, what it means to draw, what it means to build. I'm someone who hates drawing, and so every time I'm in a workshop and they say, draw your vision of X, I just think, oh no, I hate drawing. And it takes me a long time to get into it. But then once I do, I end up producing something that is inevitably different to what I would have produced if I had gone to something like writing, which is more natural for me. And that is something that, even though it's happened over and over, I'm always surprised by the process. And so it's fascinating how inextricably we're linked to our physical environments and our habits too.
Well, creatively, you have to go against the grain sometimes. Maybe you can only carry a vision so far in this direction, and something has to pull you away. Maybe that's something we all should do. I can't get anywhere, so let me just play something. Pick up a guitar and play some music, go outside and go for a walk, and ideas come to you. I'm fascinated by the mega blocks and what can be produced when you don't expect anything. That's when you can sometimes get the greatest. You don't like drawing, but if you make yourself go there, you may be surprised at what you find.
I feel like we could keep having this conversation forever because I feel like it's actually an endless source of information, knowledge, creativity, ideas, all of the above. But I know that we want to keep it to an hour, and so I just had a couple other things that I wanted to ask specifically. I wanted to ask, and we've touched on it a little bit before, but I wanted to, hopefully finish the conversation with asking a little bit about how we can kind of take some of these concepts and really strengthen our relationship between kind of scientific or environmental or academic concepts and community practice. How we can strengthen that relationship between specialists and community maybe is one of the ways to look at it. But before that, I also wanted to ask briefly if Kirstie could just explain, if you could just explain where you are and what we're seeing behind you, because I think that fits exactly with this conversation.
Okay, I try and be very brief, but behind me you can see a kind of structure. It's supposed to look like a mountain.
Maybe you could walk over, show us a little bit closer.
Yeah.
You just see the little pieces of paper. You can't quite.
Yeah, it's okay. I'll try that. And it's a string mountain, and it's a part of an art installation, a collaborative one called The Question Is Scientific Question, and an economics one, as it turns out. What if the gold needs to stay in the ground? And it's what is it? Protest and poetry art suspended inside a string mountain, asking that question. And yeah, it's open to the public soon. I'll see if I can move backwards and not trip over anything.
You're in Dunedin, right?
Yes, sorry. I never mentioned where I was. I'm in Dunedin. Here's one of Claire Bennon's artworks.
Mm-hmm.
The landscape inside the person is kind of what this is, and these pieces represent, I guess, parts of our being inside the mountain. We are the mountain. Yeah, is that enough? I'm taking up the last minutes, Lola.
No. And so just because I think it's a really cool concept, and so just because I visited, if I could just elaborate a little bit more, these pieces of artwork are strung up. Artwork and poetry are strung up in strings that are in the shape of a mountain, right? And it invites people to go in the mountain, through the mountain, and it's very tactile, right?
Yeah, it's tactile. Like people, like it's hard to get it in a close up. It is your piece, Lola, and people come in and sort of grab them and read them, which surprises me. And they sort of tap people's shoulders. And one of the ideas is it's a little bit tricky to walk in here, and that is because I wanted people's body to experience having to be careful in a fragile artistic environment, but really it's about being careful in the landscape around us. I'll stop talking.
And that fragility of structure is really interesting too. So anyway, I noticed the whole time that was in your background, and you hadn't mentioned it yet, so I thought I had to ask you about it.
Thank you. Thanks.
But anyway, yes, so following on that, I mean, the thing that's great about an exhibit like that is the way that it's open to the public. It's also, you have a huge variety of people that you've invited to be part of it. And it really is, it seems to me at least like this huge community effort. It's raising awareness for the gold mining that's continuing or being reinvigorated in southern New Zealand, in Otago. And so that kind of exhibit that brings a lot of people together. I think, lots of people, people were poets, artists, a mix of all kinds of things. and invites people into the space as well to feel that kind of, the physical presence of the strings of mountain above them. I think that ties right into this last kind of topic that I wanted to ask about, which is how do we, whether we're artists, whether we're scientists, whether we're policymakers or researchers, we're all in fields that are relatively specialized. How important is it? I think we've all agreed that it's very important. How do we foster that connection to the community? And where do you see this going in the future? And also, as a side note, there is a reason, which I won't go into because there are really many reasons, but there's a reason that a journal like Flash Frontier, which is a literary journal, has decided that we've decided to start this interdisciplinary series of discussions this year because it's important. And I think we probably all of us in the room can imagine lots of reasons why now is an important time to have these conversations. So where do you all see this going in the future? And how might we further our progress there?
Like Lola, you've visited us in Rotorua in Te Whanonui tu Teata. So we have one of our main campuses is in Rotorua, and the name of the building is, we're privileged to have the common ancestor of the three hapu, of the three iwi of the land, Tutiata. So it means the great hall or the great house of Tutiata. And this is open to the public, and it is one of the first highly award-winning timber construct building. And that has the narrative of the land, of the tangata whenua in it. It has exhibitions in it. And we took it as an inspiration that if we want to take science further, we need that interface between the public, between indigenous knowledge, global knowledge, between arts and science. So we did it very pragmatically and thought unless we bring it together and we lead that, it won't happen. So we took a very proactive approach for that.
Yeah, shall I go now? Yeah, I absolutely agree, Florian. Generally, I think for sort of academics, if you like, community engaged academics, I think we see our research and practice as being in the service of communities in general. And I think that's quite hard to put into practice. I think you can do lots of things to try and inspire that, but I think doing that on the ground is much more difficult. So I think we need to work directly with and for local communities all around Aotearoa New Zealand, for instance, but elsewhere too, all around the world. I think we need to work with and for the global policy community to think through and push for the inclusion of diverse perspectives, which is what I do in policy making and also in agenda setting and action taking in places like we've talked about planetary boundaries work that the Earth Commission does, the International Science Council, IPBES, other UN organizations. We have to be there. We have to take the voices of people with us. But I also think finally, my final point is that I think in our work, we not only have to see ourselves as being the people who speak to these things, but we have to really work in ways that create space for others to speak to these things as well. So, and I think this is where art is amazing. That it allows us to take people and communities and our wider kin with us, and it helps us to really provide the kinds of platforms for more voices and ideas to thrive and to take root, so that we get a really richer sense of innovation that not only looks forward but actually looks back as well. Yeah.
That sense of innovation, that also the idea that innovation looks forward and backwards. Innovation isn't always producing something that is, it is producing something new, but we can't only be, it seems like a common theme is that we can't only be this kind of productivity focused, and also that the timeline of the future is longer than tomorrow.
As an educator in terms of arts, I try to advise my students so their music doesn't become a commodity and product of a society. I really hope for my students that music stays alive for them, not something to be sold, and that music stay alive in a way of our interaction, that it goes with how we interact, and that how music stays alive is being part of a conversation, being part of communities, being a language which is different than the languages we speak. It's a sonic language. We can share information and we can operate on. In terms of climate change, I sometimes was inspired by ecological activist Derek Jensen. He was saying we should each choose something in the nature and protect it, because the nature is under attack right now. But I feel like, for me personally, I feel like to just keep relating, relating to what's around us. Not get too distracted, and just stay local, and see what's needed to be done, and stay open. I've recently worked with the horseshoe crab, the organism which is 450 million years old and is still accompanying us, pre-dinosaur organism. So I feel like just to keep relating to, I was so curious how to relate to this organism and how to, because that's sustainability in itself. And so I feel like these are some of the organisms which I'm inspired by also in my work sometimes. So and horseshoe crab is recently like shrinking population, so maybe I want to protect horseshoe crab. Yeah.
Yeah.
I would just say, I think, not to joke, but I think that maybe the Cat Stevens song, "Where Do the Children Play," has probably done more for the environment than anything I've ever published.
Yeah. And it's amazing how things like that stay with us over decades too. Decades or centuries, even centuries of art that do stay with us because they carry kind of universality of meaning or something. Yeah.
And helping to, it's one thing to educate and inform and even concern people, but to motivate and inspire them, I think, is more powerful.
Yeah, and that's interesting too. We have a lot of concern in our world today, which is important, or warranted. But where is the motivation? How do we actually turn that concern into something positive, something generative, something regenerative, as Florian was saying? Yeah. Sam, I was just wondering if you
Well,
have any.
someone's
Yeah. Yes.
someone mentioned about giving space, and I think that helps in whatever field it is. Give space to fail. It's okay to fail. How many times did Edison fail before he got the light bulb? And I know in writing it's like that. In teaching creative writing, they have to have space and feel comfortable in presenting what they're working on, what they're feeling, and that builds, I guess, a community in itself. If he can do it, if she can do it, I can do it, that kind of thing. But they have to have space to do that, and that's necessary.
Yeah, that space, that freedom. I think there's an element of respect in giving that space as well. I've noticed this with the kids that I teach too. I think that education is treated like a commodity. I think, Luke, you said something about that you don't want your students to make for their music to turn into a commodity. I think we are, I don't know what the right verb is, but we are kind of commoditizing art, productivity, education, knowledge,
Right.
learning, science. And these kids then, they are products of what they're learning in school. And we don't give them the kind of respect or space to play, to find things out, to learn in a more natural way. And I think that applies then to adults too, that we don't have we have a lot of obligations, and the concern in the world maybe also becomes another obligation, and yet it's kind of, the concern for the world is an obligation that is also somehow a commodity. Like, it's not something that we feel personally motivated to do anything about. So where that sense of like quantifying productivity, and then that qualifying our motivation or our experience, is a really interesting place to come to with this conversation. Again, I feel like we could go on all day with this kind of conversation, and I think hopefully we will have more of these kinds of conversations. I know many of us are fostering these kinds of conversations in our own communities, in our own workplaces and environments. And having these international and groups is also really valuable to bring people together. So I think that's a good place to end it, but I wanted to say thank you again to everybody for participating. Thank you all for coming from all your corners of the earth and bringing your expertise and your experience and your insight into this discussion. It's been really wonderful to have this morning.
Thank you so
Yes.
much, Lola. Yeah, thank you, everybody.